really, I mean, when I was young and growing up, Italy was the standard. I saw them win a World Cup once upon a time. But this it has been a disappointment now for over a decade. But does that mean the talent has completely fallen off in the country, or does it just mean that there's a lack of leadership and a lack of something that can't click for this Italian football team? Because we talked about in terms of popularity, there's nothing more popular than football in Italy. But is there something to it? What has led to this downfall? And then on the other side of that too, Ryan, is it time that we stop bragging about U.S. men's national team players like Weston McKennie, like Christian Pulisic, and what they're doing in Serie A? Because is it really all that impressive when put up against the other leagues, especially when you consider where the Italian football team is and their lack of production? I'd certainly say you could certainly say that.
Yeah, and also just to start this off with a fun way, this is the guy who scored the PK. How do you pronounce that name?
Esmir.
How do you pronounce that?
Okay. Bajratovic.
Sounds good enough to me. So during the video
guess.
where I
Sorry.
break the pasta, I'm like, I'm not even going to attempt this. But his nickname is the Milwaukee Messi because he was actually born in Wisconsin. His parents are Bosnian refugees, and they settled in Wisconsin, I guess. That's kind of how the story goes. He plays for the New England Revolution in the MLS, but he's only 21 years old. But that is his name, the Milwaukee Messi. But that's his name.
Well, let's get that guy. Let's try to get that guy on our team. All right.
But that's his name.
That's funny.
However you want to pronounce it is up to you. But that's his name.
I don't know if my guess was even close, but I tried.
But no, for Italy, it's crazy to think that this is a nation that won it all in 2006, and then in 2010 didn't get out of the group because they, of course, had the Champions Curse. Then 2014, they were put in a insane group and then lost it, then didn't qualify for 18 or 2022, and now 2026. So this is just I just found this on Twitter too yesterday. Wanted to read it for you guys. The last time Italy played in a World Cup, 2014. VAR was not used in football yet. Buffon was still playing football. Lamine Yamal was just 7 years old. Messi and Ronaldo were 27 and 29. Barack Obama was president of the United States. Real Madrid had 10 Champions League titles. They now have 15. And Donnarumma was 15 years old. That's what was going on the last time Italy made it to a World Cup. This nation is which it's just really weird to me, is the fact that they won it in 2006, didn't had the Champions Curse, whatever, in 2010, then go.
Hey, don't forget the Ice Bucket Challenge. By the way, the Ice Bucket Challenge was 2014 too. That was a good time.
Okay, the LS Bucket
Dumping
Challenge
ice on each
apparently.
other. All right, go ahead.
What was I gonna say? Yeah, no. And then you think in 2012 they got BTA by Spain in the Euro final, Balotelli, Super Mario, that whole run, and then they win it in 2021, the Euros. Then you think, okay, you think of the guys like Locatelli and Chiesa, and you still have Bonucci and Chiellini. And Donnarumma, obviously. Like, they still had a good squad. Calafiori, another name. Like, they have a good squad, but they just can't put it together. I don't know what they can't do. You're telling me you can't beat Bosnia in 90 minutes? Like, you can't do that? You lose them in a shootout? You skied your PKs? Makes no sense. But, again, I think there is a little bit of a reason for some of this. I think it does talk back to domestically. Like, and whether you want to think this is a good argument or not, because everyone has said that the Premier League is the best league in the world, yet England doesn't win anything. However, I will argue this: since 2018, in every major tournament, England has made the finals or made the semifinals, which is funny to me because England hated Gareth Southgate for the longest time. I'm just saying, they hated Southgate, yet he got them the furthest ever in like 40 years. I digress. But anyway, the Italian Serie A has been awful. It's just been awful in recent years. All you have is really Inter Milan, who lost to City in the Champions League final a couple years ago, and I think they lost last year to what's their name, PSG. But if you look at their path, it was relatively easy. Anyway, But I
Yeah.
think if the downfall is kind of the same downfall that happened to Juventus when they had prime Pirlo and prime Chiellini and Bonucci and prime Buffon, and then you think of like Paul Pogba was on those teams, and you think of Carlos
Hmm.
Tevez was on those teams. Dybala was an unbelievable prospect for a couple of years. But since the downfall of Juventus, who was like the best team in Serie A for a handful of times, Arturo Vidal, another name, but they made a couple of Champions League finals. They couldn't necessarily win them because they played against prime Real Madrid or prime Barcelona, it seemed like every single year. But since their downfall has been the downfall of Italian soccer, like it felt like for a period of time there that
Hmm.
the Juventus was just feeding into Italy soccer. And you think of the other
Hmm.
the nations in the world, or not PSG, Bayern Munich used to be full of German players.
PSG.
And PSG obviously with France as well. But you think of Germany when they won the World Cup. I think 8 of that starting 11 were all Bayern Munich players. Then you think of
Hmm.
PSG now. Kylian Mbappe started there. Ousmane Dembele is still there. So they still have
Hmm.
French players and French influence on all this stuff. Then you go
Yeah.
over in England. A lot of players play for. It feels like there's a couple Englishmen on Arsenal, Rice and Saka. Liverpool's got a handful. Chelsea's got a handful. United, City, like they
Yeah.
all have English players. Then you go over to
Hmm.
Spain. Lamine Yamal's in there. And then that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head.
Hmm.
Okay, Lamine Yamal. And then Zubamendi was there for a while for Sociedad. So
Yeah.
he was a key
Right.
player, obviously. And there's a handful of Sociedad players in the starting 11. But it just seems to be Serie A. Like when I was growing up, this used to be like the team. Like everyone should worry about the AC Milans and the Inter Milans, and the Juventus, and all those teams. Like everyone should worry about it. And people in Premier League sides and La Liga sides used to take in the hot prospects from in Italy. And remember Stefan Jovetic, for anyone that knows that name. Man, did he flop
Hmm.
at Manchester City? But he was his next big Italian thing. But no,
Yep.
a lot of these players just flop out of Italy, and the teams are just not as good as they used to be anymore. And I think that has
Hmm.
something to do with the downfall of Italian soccer. Now, this brings up to the main point. Can we say that Pulisic and McKennie might be slightly overrated? If the Italian soccer league isn't what we all say it to be, yet these two are dominating in it, can we say that the league is slightly overrated? And the stock that we have in saying Pulisic is a top 10 winger in the world, we then can't say that because Pulisic is playing in a
Yeah.
subpar league.
Yeah.
If that is the case, and the same thing with Weston McKennie, who is ironically at Juventus, which is funny that I was just
Hmm.
bashing Juventus for the longest time there. But I think
Yeah.
we cannot say that Pulisic and McKennie are unbelievable talents because they're dominating in Serie A, because in reality, Serie A is a subpar league.
Yeah, and I think on the part of Italian football, it's time to clear house. Like that's the option
I
that
think
you
they
have.
have, though.
It's been over a
Clean
decade.
house
Yeah,
again.
it's true. That's true. I clean house again, but I think it is a systemic issue, and it's the same thing that we talk about now. Not nearly to the same. They don't have the same cultural problems we have in the United States, but you could argue that in terms of player identification, player talent, all of those things play into your lack of success at the international level. It's not just coaching. It's not just the guy who's running the federation. It's everything top to bottom. So it's kind of like when the IRS goes in and looks at your taxes and takes a look at everything and goes, you didn't, things don't quite look right here. It feels like they got to check the books in Italy and really kind of figure out, are all of those other things in the places they need to be. Now, in terms of Weston McKennie and Christian Pulisic, it's the same argument as, we take a look at Major League Soccer, it with the lack of productivity in Italian football and really how much they've fallen off, not just the national team, but just competing against European talent. They have not been great in playing against teams in the bigger leagues, the higher leagues in the world. It has become watered down. And so I think they have greatly benefited from a league that has gotten to that point to where we can say that it is not one of the top leagues and that it is very watered down. Does that necessarily take away from the good things they've done? No, but does that mean that they're exposed to the level of talent that, we want them to compete against when it comes to the World Cup, and especially in the high leverage games against those top 15, top 10 teams in the world? No, And you can say confidently because when they do, they look lost. The way that Pulisic looked lost yesterday against Portugal in some of those runs, the way that Weston McKennie got a goal, but I mean his player rating yesterday was only a 5 out of 10. He didn't necessarily stand out in any one particular way. I still think they're good players, but it is perspective is one of those things, especially in this sport, that it's hard to put things into perspective sometimes because you could even let's just mention Messi. I mean, you look at what Messi's doing in the MLS, and us as Americans, we're like, "Wow, this is great." Well, look at how much Messi's still producing at this age. Would he even stand a chance in the Premier League at his age? I mean, I would like to think he is because he's Messi. He would figure it out one way or the other, but it's two different planets. I mean, this is like Mars and Pluto in terms of the separation between the two. And so it showed in the Club World Cup when Miami just got blown out of the water by PSG. What was it, 4-0 or whatever it was? So, yes, I think it is okay as an American to be like, our valuation of McKennie and Pulisic is way over the top of what it should be. Not to say they're not good players, but this weekend showed us more than I think what we expected it to, because I didn't expect those guys to get exposed. The Roldans of the world, the Tim Reams, I'm like, yeah, you know what? We're gonna have some trouble there. Our midfield, the Berhalters, it's like, okay, yeah, those guys might look a little lost out there. I didn't think that it was going to be like, oh, Christian Pulisic doesn't look like Christian Pulisic. He just looks like another guy on this team. Weston McKennie, same exact thing. I mean, he's a wizard at Juventus. He has been a wizard. Flo Balogun's been amazing. But when you put him against Belgium and Portugal and some of the top end Premier League, Champions League talent, it's like men against boys. And the way that both of those teams beat us, it's kind of fascinating because I remember when you remember the whole analogy with Michigan football, how they talked about Joe Klatt said they were like a boa constrictor. Like they just boas kill you because, you don't realize like they just slowly tighten their grip until you can't get out anymore, and you don't even realize it's happening until it's happening. It felt like that. It also felt like, like when a boxer is far superior to his opponent, just bobbing and weaving, shoulder rolling, just waiting patiently, just hunting, just hunting. And then when it was time to strike, it was time to strike, and they took care of business. And so I think they were overwhelmed. I think they weren't used to seeing that level of talent. I think, if anything, this weekend told us not just a lot about the players that we have, but a lot about the leagues that they're playing in, whether it be the MLS, whether it be Serie A. Now, obviously, there are exceptions to that and players that are playing in much higher leagues, but when you're surrounded by 8 other guys that are like, what the hell is going on? It's really tough. It's really tough to perform well. So I think our depth more than anything else has certainly got exposed.
Even though it's strange that our depth is now considered one of our strongest parts.
Exactly.
So
yeah, compared
to
what it used to
that
be.
This tweet did come from our good friend Jason Collinsworth at I Hate Soccer podcast. Make sure to check them out. That's where I got this idea as I was recovering from my run yesterday. Also, he started making me listen to Mambo Italiano by Dean Martin because of that. But no, there's a couple reasons why Italy has started to suck, and did some deep diving about it. And one of them popped my I should have known. One of them is money constraints. They said those Serie A clubs can't spend $100 billion like the Prem and La Liga sides do. And I go, that makes a lot of sense. That doesn't really, like, I should have known that. That's true. That they don't make a ton of money, and they sell their players to stay. They're a selling league. They're not a buying league anymore. So that just to stay afloat and all that fun stuff. They're stuck in the old identity back in the 90s and all with like Maldini and those guys. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. They are still stuck in the past in the 90s, and they're not evolving. And I think the best quote is, the legendary ultra-defensive tactic may have worked in 1990, but football in 2025 is a sprint, not a chess match. That's not evolution. That's fossilization. I like that. That's a really good quote. Poor youth development. That's been known for a while. And then more scandals, including Serie A for the whole Juventus thing. Training grounds are outdated. It's just an old, crumbling, crippling
Yeah.
federation. All the top
Yeah.
stadiums are like they're iconic, and everyone talks about how iconic they are, but they are really,
Yeah.
really old and
Someone
outdated.
someone has to yeah. Someone has to take it upon themselves to take this thing over, to really change the course of Italian football because it's going to take everybody, but it really is going to take a one leader, one voice from the front to be like we gotta. It really starts from the bottom, and I'll say the same thing about U.S. soccer. I mean, like people are like, well, why are we struggling at the level that we're struggling at? It all comes back to the youth. It all comes back to youth development. It all comes back to all those other things. It's apples and oranges comparing us to Italy, but just saying that's
Yeah,
probably
but at the
why
same
they,
time,
they need
everyone
yeah.
said the same thing back in 2018. Oh, let's regroup this whole thing, and then you got to 2020, you had a
Yep.
blip, you win the Euros, and then you fail for the next two. So I don't know who it
Yeah.
is, but you've got to blow up everything. Like it's
Yeah.
like what you just said is right, but they've done that. So like, what do they have to do differently this time? Like that's the
Yeah.
new question. It's
Maybe
not.
blow it up is probably the better analogy for this situation versus clearing house. Clearing house just says, "Hey, we'll get rid of certain people." Blowing it up means blowing it up,
No,
which
like
we've
you got to blow
talked
this thing
about
up
here
because
before too. Yeah.
Germany didn't qualify the '08 Euros. '04 Euro. They didn't qualify for
Mhm.
1 Euros. Before 2012. And that's when they're like, okay, we got to do something. And then eventually the reward was a 2014 World Cup championship. So